Welcome to our deep dive into internet fandom
Okay.
between 2008 and 2017.
Yeah.
We've got a great stack of articles here
A lot of good stuff.
about how fans were connecting with their idols during this time period.
Right.
So we'll be looking at things like the rise of platforms like Tumblr,
Yes.
Vine, we've got Bieber fever, the Directioners,
Of course.
and even the birth of stan culture.
The birth and evolution of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All that good stuff.
Really a fascinating time period because it really revolutionized fan idol interaction, I think.
Yeah.
This was when the internet and social media really transformed isolated fan communities into these big interconnected networks.
Yeah.
And platforms like YouTube and Twitter and Tumblr weren't just places to consume content.
Right.
They became spaces where fans could interact with each other and even directly engage with their idols.
Yeah, it feels like a whole new level of access. This wasn't like, back in the day, sending a fan letter and hoping for a signed photograph in return.
Exactly, yeah.
So.
This is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
Fans were actively participating, shaping narratives,
Yeah.
and influencing their idols' careers in real time.
Yeah.
A good example is Justin Bieber.
Okay, yeah.
His rise to global stardom was fueled by the power of believers on social media.
Right.
They weren't just listening to his music, they were organizing flash mobs, trending hashtags, creating this unprecedented sense of intimacy with him.
I wonder, though, was this sense of intimacy unique to the internet era?
That's an interesting question.
Or did fans in the past, even without social media, develop these intense, sometimes even delusional attachments to celebrities?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think that there's always been a degree of fantasy and projection involved in fandom.
Right.
But the internet and social media really amplified this phenomenon.
Yeah.
It created a constant feedback loop between fans and celebrities.
Yeah.
The immediacy and the accessibility of these platforms made the parasocial relationships even stronger.
Yeah, and then there's the rise of YouTubers.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you sent in several articles about this.
Yes.
It's fascinating how they kind of became like the epitome of the relatable idol.
Uh-huh.
I think about someone like Shane Dawson and his early vlogs,
Yes.
filmed in his messy bedroom.
Right.
It was a stark contrast to the polished image of traditional celebrities.
It really was a complete shift in the landscape of celebrity.
Yeah.
These YouTubers weren't on MTV or in glossy magazines.
Right.
They were in their bedrooms, talking to their webcams and sharing their lives, their quirks, their vulnerabilities with their viewers.
Yeah.
And this created a sense of authenticity and accessibility
that
really resonated with audiences.
Especially younger generations.
Especially younger generations who craved that genuine connection.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I wonder if that was kind of blurring the lines a little bit.
In what way?
Did it put undue pressure on fans to become creators themselves?
Interesting.
And maybe kind of take away from the simple joy of just watching and enjoying content.
That is an interesting point.
Yeah.
I think the accessibility of these platforms
Yeah.
and the apparent ease with which YouTubers achieve success did lead to this pressure to create, to constantly be on. And it's a trend that we still see today.
Right.
With TikTok and other social media platforms.
Yeah.
The line between being a consumer and a creator has definitely become more blurred.
Yeah, and of course it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, right?
Not at all.
There are controversies, too.
Of course.
YouTubers like PewDiePie and Logan Paul, while immensely popular, they also faced huge backlash for their content.
Right.
Do you think those controversies were inevitable?
Some.
Given the nature of this new, more intimate form of fame?
Absolutely. I mean, with this increased access and constant scrutiny from fans, the lines between public persona and private life became incredibly blurred.
Yeah.
It created a breeding ground for unrealistic expectations. And when those expectations weren't met, the consequences could be quite severe.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about Vine.
Okay.
So while YouTube was fostering longer form content, Vine was all about those quick hits of creativity.
Yes.
You sent in some fascinating articles about magcon.
Yes.
And I think it really captures what made Vine so unique.
I agree.
Yeah.
magcon, with its group of boys next door like Cameron Dallas, Nash Greer, Shawn Mendes, really capitalized on Vine's short, catchy video format.
Yeah.
These weren't highly produced music videos or polished comedy sketches.
Right.
They were quick, relatable snippets of life that resonated with a young audience.
And the MagCon meet and greets.
Oh my God.
I mean, it's almost hard to imagine now
I know.
that fans could actually hug their idols. That must have added a whole new layer to the feeling of intimacy we've been talking about.
The physical proximity afforded by those meet and greets really added an element of reality to what could otherwise feel like this purely online relationship.
Right.
But MagCon also highlights the ephemeral nature of internet fame.
Uh-huh.
Vine itself disappeared, and with it, the original MagCon group.
It's almost like a cautionary tale.
Kind of.
This incredible rise to fame fueled by a platform that ultimately vanished.
In a way, yes, it serves as a reminder of how quickly trends can change in the digital landscape.
Right.
But some members, notably Shawn Mendes,
Yeah.
were able to leverage their Vine success
Mm-hmm.
to transition to other platforms and build lasting careers.
Yeah, speaking of launching pads,
Yeah,
we can't forget about One Direction.
of course.
And their incredibly dedicated fans, the Directioners.
Oh, yeah?
This is where we see fandom, particularly online fandom,
Right.
reaching a new level of intensity and organization.
Mm-hmm.
Tumblr and Twitter became central hubs for this fandom.
For sure.
And they weren't just passively enjoying the music,
Right.
they were creating fan art,
Yes,
writing fan fiction,
of course.
and of course, engaging in shipping.
Lots of shipping.
Lots of shipping.
Yes,
The Directioners were a force to be reckoned with.
absolutely. They broke records,
Yeah.
dominated award shows,
Uh-huh.
and had this palpable influence on the music industry.
Yeah.
And their use of platforms like Tumblr and Twitter
Right.
allowed them to connect with each other,
Yeah.
share their creations, and amplify their collective voice.
Yeah.
It was really something.
And this brings us to shipping,
Yes.
a term that was very prevalent
Very.
in the One Direction fandom.
Yeah.
Remember Larry Stylinson?
Of course.
The imagined relationship between Harry Styles
Right.
and Louis Tomlinson?
Yeah.
I mean, it spawned a whole subculture within the fandom.
Absolutely.
I mean, why do you think fans are so drawn to creating these imagined relationships between their idols?
I think it speaks to the desire to explore different narratives,
Okay.
to delve deeper into the personalities and relationships of their idols.
Mm-hmm.
It allows fans to exercise their creativity and imagination
Right.
and connect with other fans who share those interests.
Yeah.
It's a way of actively engaging with the source material and kind of making it their own.
It's interesting to think about the implications of that, especially as fan fiction
Right.
and fan-created content started to gain more mainstream recognition.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, the success of After,
Yeah.
which started as a Harry Styles fan fiction
Yeah.
and then it became a best-selling book series and movie franchise,
Yeah.
is a prime example of how fan creations can cross over into the mainstream.
That must have been incredibly validating for fans.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
almost like a form of recognition, a way of saying that their creativity and passion matters.
Right. And it really blurred the lines between fan and creator,
Yeah.
raising questions about intellectual property originality and the evolving nature of authorship in the digital age.
Okay, so I think it's time to take a deeper dive into one platform in particular.
Okay.
That seems like you have a lot of interest in
I do.
Tumblr.
Yes.
Think of it as like a digital scrapbook where aesthetics, identity,
Uh-huh.
and pop culture collide.
Yeah.
From what I've seen in the materials you've provided,
Yeah.
it seems like Tumblr was a breeding ground for a whole range of subcultures and fandoms.
It really was, it was a really unique space.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about consuming content.
Right.
It was about creating and curating a personal online identity.
Okay.
It was a very visual platform
Yeah.
where users could express themselves through images,
Uh-huh.
GIFs, quotes, text,
Yeah.
all while connecting with others who share their interests.
You mentioned subcultures.
Yeah.
What were some of the prominent ones that thrived on Tumblr during this era?
Oh, there were so many.
Okay.
Dark academia,
Okay.
with its romanticized vision of intellectual pursuits,
Mhm.
was hugely popular. Then there was pastel goth,
Okay.
blend of cute and creepy aesthetics,
Okay.
and of course soft grunge,
Huh?
a more melancholic take on 90s fashion and music.
Okay, so how did those subcultures kind of intersect with fandom?
In fascinating ways.
Okay.
For example, the Super Holox fandom,
Okay.
which encompassed fans of the shows Supernatural,
Okay.
Doctor Who,
Okay.
and Sherlock,
Uh-huh.
found a natural home on Tumblr.
That's an interesting combination of shows.
Right.
What do you think drew those fans together?
Well, all three shows feature complex characters, intricate plots,
Right.
and a healthy dose of supernatural intrigue.
I see the connection now.
Right.
And of course, you can't talk about Tumblr without mentioning the memes.
Oh, the memes.
It seemed like every other day there was a new phrase or a reaction GIF that originated on Tumblr and then spread like wildfire across the internet.
It's true. Tumblr was a meme factory.
Yeah.
And it had its own unique language. This blend of lowercase irony, unpunctuated rants that perfectly captured the spirit of the era.
Yeah.
It was a space where everyone's voice, no matter how quirky or esoteric, could find an audience.
But it wasn't just about aesthetics and fandom, right? Tumblr was also a platform for social justice.
Yes.
And identity exploration.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Discussions about feminism, LGBTQ plus rights, mental health.
Yeah.
All found a home on Tumblr.
Yeah.
It was a space where users could explore their identities and connect with others navigating similar journeys.
So it sounds like Tumblr was this incredibly vibrant space.
It really was.
Where personal expression, social activism, and passionate fandom all converged.
It truly was a space ahead of its time in many ways.
Yes.
Fostering a sense of inclusivity and encouraging open dialogue about important societal issues.
Yeah, it was a shame to see it decline in popularity in later years. Okay, so before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, we have to talk about one more big concept. Stan culture.
Yes.
This term emerged from this era,
Right.
and it's still widely used today.
It is.
Although often with negative connotations from Beliebers to Directioners, we saw this rise of intense fan loyalty, sometimes bordering on obsession.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the evolution of stan culture during this period?
Well, the term stan, as you know, comes from Eminem's song of the same name.
Right.
About an obsessive fan.
Right.
And it became a way to describe fans who were incredibly devoted to their idols.
Yeah.
Often to an extreme degree.
I'm starting to see how this intense devotion, while seemingly positive on the surface, could also have a darker side.
Exactly. And this is where we start to see the complexities and the potential pitfalls of stan culture.
Okay, so let's delve into those complexities in part 2 of this deep dive. It'll be interesting to see how this intense fan loyalty manifested in both positive and negative ways.
Sounds good. This passionate support from stans could be a force for good. You know, but like any powerful force, it had the potential to go awry.
Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of what we've been talking about kind of has this double-edged sword quality to it.
Right.
Incredible connection and creativity on one side, and then the potential for blurring boundaries and toxicity on the other.
Exactly.
So how did that play out with stan culture? What did this darker side look like in practice?
Well, we saw it in those like infamous fandom wars on Twitter.
Oh, right.
Like Directioners versus Beliebers, Swifties versus Katy Cats.
Yeah.
These online battles for supremacy could get pretty intense.
Was that unique to this era, though? Were fans always this combative?
I mean, there have always been rivalries between fandoms.
Yeah.
But the internet and social media gave them a whole new platform for these conflicts to play out.
Yeah, I can see how the immediacy and anonymity of the internet could escalate things.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just about bragging rights.
Yeah.
We saw instances of harassment doxing, coordinated attacks on critics or rival fandoms.
Right.
It was a dark side to the otherwise positive aspects of fan community and mobilization.
It's interesting to think about how this immense fan power, which could propel an artist to the top of the charts, could also be used in these really harmful ways.
It's true.
I wonder, was there like a turning point where stan culture, which started with this like really passionate support, veered into something more problematic?
That's a good question. It's hard to pinpoint a specific turning point.
Okay.
I think it was more of a gradual shift as the internet and social media became more ingrained in our lives, as fans became more empowered and their voices became amplified online.
Right.
There was this sense that they could directly influence the success or failure of their idols. And with that came a sense of responsibility, but also a sense of entitlement.
I can see that. And I imagine that the like 24/7 nature of the internet played a role as well. Oh, absolutely.
It's not like you could just turn off the fandom at the end of the day.
Exactly. The constant connectivity
Right.
really fueled this sense of urgency, this need to be constantly engaged,
Yeah.
constantly defending your idol,
Right.
constantly proving your loyalty.
Yeah.
It created a breeding ground for obsessive behavior and unhealthy attachments.
So we've talked about the platforms, the personalities,
What?
the highs and lows of fandom during this period.
Yeah?
But let's zoom out a bit.
Okay.
Why should we care about all of this? Why is it important to understand this particular era of fandom?
Well, I think it's important because this era really laid the groundwork for so much of what we see in fandom today.
Okay.
You know, the rise of social media, the shift in power dynamics,
Right.
the emergence of the relatable idol.
Yeah.
These are all trends that continue to shape how we interact with our idols, how we consume and create content.
Right.
How we form communities online. So it's like this era was kind of like the big bang of modern fandom.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
It was a period of rapid expansion and evolution. A time when the rules were being rewritten.
Right.
And the possibilities seemed endless.
Looking back, are there any lessons that we can learn from this era? Anything that can help us navigate the complexities of fandom in a healthier, more sustainable way?
I think one of the most important lessons is the importance of boundaries.
Okay.
As fans, we need to recognize that no matter how much we adore a celebrity, how much we connect with their work,
Right.
they are ultimately individuals with their own lives and their own complexities.
Yeah.
And our admiration should never come at the expense of their well-being or the well-being of others.
It's a good reminder that parasocial relationships, while powerful and meaningful, shouldn't be mistaken for real-life friendships.
Exactly. And I think another important lesson is the need to be mindful of the power of our collective voice.
Okay.
As fans, we have an incredible ability to amplify messages,
Right.
to support causes, to hold our idols accountable.
Yeah.
But with that power comes a responsibility to use it wisely and ethically.
It's a lot to think about in terms of like how fandom was expressed during this era.
Right.
It feels like it went way beyond just wearing a band t-shirt.
Oh, yeah.
Or putting up posters in your bedroom.
Absolutely.
The internet provided this whole new toolkit for fans to showcase their love and creativity.
And each platform kind of played a different role.
Yeah.
You know, YouTube, for instance, became a hub for fan-made music videos and tributes.
Oh, yeah.
Remember those like epic One Direction fan edits set to their most heartbreaking songs?
Oh, absolutely. I spent hours watching those.
Yeah.
And those edits weren't just about showcasing technical skills. They were about storytelling.
Yes.
Reinterpreting the narratives of the artists. Creating new emotional experiences for fellow fans.
You hit the nail on the head.
And then you have platforms like Tumblr, which were like visual encyclopedias of fandom.
It's true.
Mood boards, aesthetic, edits, GIF sets.
Yeah.
It was all about capturing the essence of your fandom in a way that was both personal and shareable.
Right.
And we can't forget about the explosion of fan fiction during this era.
Of course not.
Platforms like Wattpad and fanfiction.net became incredibly popular.
Very popular.
Directioners in particular were prolific fan fiction writers.
They were.
We already talked about After, which started as a Harry Styles fan fiction.
Yes.
And its journey to mainstream success.
Right.
Did this validate fan creativity, or did it raise concerns about intellectual property and originality? What are your thoughts?
That's a complex question.
Yeah.
I think on the one hand, it was incredibly validating for fans to see their work recognized and appreciated on a larger scale.
Yeah.
It really demonstrated the creative power of fandom.
Right.
And challenged traditional notions of authorship. But on the other hand, it did raise concerns about intellectual property.
Right.
And the ethics of adapting characters and storylines that weren't originally your own.
Right.
So it's a bit of a gray area.
It seems like that's a debate that continues to this day.
It certainly does.
Yeah.
It's a debate worth having as we continue to navigate the increasingly blurred lines between fan creation and professional content creation.
It's remarkable how fans were essentially taking the narratives they loved.
Right.
And expanding upon them.
Yeah.
Creating whole new worlds and storylines.
It speaks to the power of fandom to inspire creativity.
Right.
To foster community. And to provide a space for fans to connect with each other.
Yeah.
And explore their shared passions.
But As we've discussed, there was also a darker side to this passionate engagement.
Yes.
Social media, especially Twitter, created this illusion of direct access.
Right.
This sense of a personal connection with celebrities that could be both exhilarating and dangerous.
It's that parasocial relationship we talked about earlier.
Right.
Fans felt like they knew these celebrities.
Yeah.
Like they were friends, confidants, even potential love interests.
Yeah.
And while that sense of connection could be positive,
Right.
fostering a sense of community and belonging,
Yeah.
it also had its downsides.
We've touched on this, but can you elaborate on those downsides?
Yeah.
What happened when those parasocial relationships soured?
Well, when an idol did something that disappointed or betrayed the fans' expectations, the backlash could be swift and brutal.
Yeah.
We saw this play out time and again.
Right.
A YouTuber caught in a scandal,
Yeah.
a pop star making a misstep. The online reaction could be intense,
Yeah.
with fans turning on their idols,
Right.
with the same fervor they once worshipped them.
Yeah, it really highlights the importance of keeping things in perspective, of recognizing that these online relationships, while powerful, are ultimately one-sided.
Exactly.
Celebrities are not our friends.
Right.
No matter how much we feel we know them.
Exactly. And it's a lesson that's still relevant today. As social media continues to shape how we interact with public figures,
Right.
we need to be mindful of the boundaries between our online lives and the real world.
Yeah.
And to avoid projecting unrealistic expectations onto those we admire from afar.
It's about finding that healthy balance, right?
Yes.
Being passionate and engaged without losing sight of reality.
Exactly. It's about celebrating the things we love.
Yeah.
In a way that's both joyful and responsible.
Okay, so we've talked about the platforms, the evolution of fan expression, the complexities of parasocial relationships. But there's another element of this era that we haven't fully unpacked yet.
Right.
The sheer intensity of fan behavior.
Right.
What we were calling stan culture.
Yes.
I think it's worth exploring this concept in more detail.
Absolutely. Stan, as we know, comes from Eminem's song of the same name about an obsessive fan.
Right.
And during this era, it became a way to describe fans who were incredibly devoted.
Yeah.
Sometimes to an extreme degree.
It's about that unwavering support. That willingness to defend your idol against any and all criticism. And while that level of dedication can be admirable, we've already touched on how it can also cross the line into toxic behavior.
Right.
You're right. And we saw that play out in those infamous fandom wars on Twitter.
Exactly.
Directioners versus Beliebers, Swifties versus Katy Cats. It was a constant battle for online supremacy.
It was.
And those battles weren't always fought fairly.
Yeah.
We talked about the harassment and doxing.
Right.
But I'm curious, what were some of the other tactics used in these fandom wars?
Well, there was a lot of strategic trending of hashtags.
Okay.
Sometimes with the goal of drowning out opposing voices or manipulating algorithms to promote their own fandom's content.
It sounds almost like a political campaign.
In a way, it was.
Right.
It was about mobilizing your base, controlling the narrative, and ultimately achieving victory for your chosen idol.
It's fascinating how these online fan communities could exert such influence. They could break streaming records, influence award shows, and even shape the trajectory of an artist's career.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, we also saw the potential for negativity.
Right.
For crossing boundaries. For blurring the lines between healthy fandom and obsessive behavior.
It's a tightrope walk, isn't it?
Yeah.
Finding that balance between passionate support
Right.
and responsible engagement.
Yeah.
It requires a critical examination of our own motivations and behaviors as fans. Because ultimately, our love for an artist, for a show, for a piece of media, should never come at the expense of our own well-being or the well-being of others.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we can be passionate fans without resorting to negativity or harassment.
Exactly. It's about fostering a culture of respect and understanding within fandom, both online and offline.
And that's a conversation that's still very much relevant today.
Absolutely.
As stan culture continues to evolve and adapt to new platforms and new forms of media.
It is, and it's one that we should all be engaging in.
Yeah.
As fans and as critical consumers of culture.
Right.
You know, how do we harness the power of fandom for good while mitigating the potential for harm? How do we create spaces where passion and respect can coexist?
Right.
These are important questions to consider as we move forward.
Wow, it's amazing to see how fandom evolved during this era from just like simple expressions of support to this complex and multifaceted force shaping the entertainment industry and online culture.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
So looking back on everything we've discussed, what do you think are like the most significant takeaways from this period between 2008 and 2017?
Well, I think one of the most significant changes was the shift in power dynamics.
Okay.
The internet and social media empowered fans in a way that was never possible before.
Yeah. That wall between celebrities and fans really started to crumble, didn't it?
It did. Suddenly, fans had this unprecedented access to their idols.
Right.
They could tweet their favorite singer, leave a comment on a YouTuber's video, and maybe even get a response.
Yeah.
This direct interaction fueled a sense of intimacy and influence that really transformed the fan-idol relationship.
It wasn't just about passively consuming content anymore.
No, not at all.
Fans were actively participating, creating, and shaping narratives.
Absolutely. And this had a profound impact on how artists marketed themselves and how fans expressed their devotion. We saw the rise of the relatable idol.
Right.
The YouTubers who built their careers on sharing their lives with their audience.
And it wasn't just on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
This idea of relatability kind of permeated other platforms as well.
You're right. It was a cultural shift.
Yeah.
Audiences were craving authenticity, a connection that went beyond the manufactured image of traditional celebrities.
But were there downsides to this increased intimacy as well?
Of course, as we discussed, the lines between fan and idol became blurred.
Right.
Leading to unrealistic expectations, boundary issues, and sometimes even toxic behavior.
So it seemed like navigating this new landscape of fandom required a whole new set of social skills.
It did.
And a deeper understanding of the potential pitfalls.
For sure, and it still does.
Right.
The challenges we saw emerge during this era, the parasocial relationships, the intensity of stan culture, the potential for online harassment.
Right.
These are all issues that continue to shape fandom in the 2020s.
It makes you wonder, what does the future hold for fandom? Will we find ways to harness the power of these online communities for good?
I hope so.
While mitigating the potential for harm.
That's the goal, right? It's a question worth pondering.
Yeah.
As technology continues to evolve, so too will the ways in which we connect with the things we love.
Right.
But I believe that the core desire for connection, for belonging, for finding others who share our passions, that's a fundamental human need that will always drive fandom.
I think you're right. It's that shared passion that makes fandom so compelling, so meaningful.
It is.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of internet fandom between 2008 and 2017, it feels like we've only just scratched the surface.
We have. It was a time of immense change and innovation.
Yeah.
A period that reshaped the landscape of entertainment and online culture.
From the rise of social media platforms like YouTube and Tumblr to the birth of stan culture, this era laid the groundwork for how we interact with our idols, how we consume and create content, and how we form communities online today.
And while it's tempting to get nostalgic for those early days of internet fandom, it's important to remember that the journey is far from over.
That's true.
Fandom continues to evolve, adapt, and find new ways to express itself in this ever-changing digital landscape.
It'll be really curious to see where it goes from here. What new platforms will emerge? What new forms of fan expression will we see? And most importantly, how will we navigate the complexities of fandom in a way that is both empowering and responsible?
Those are all great questions.
Yeah.
And I think the answers lie within each of us as fans and as critical consumers of culture.
Okay.
It's up to us to shape the future of fandom in a way that celebrates our passions while fostering a sense of community respect and understanding.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of internet fandom between 2008 and 2017.
It was my pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed exploring this era with us and that it sparked some interesting thoughts and reflections.